Federal government disburses additional 123.348 billion naira performance grant to states. We need to produce largest oil volumes possible at cheaper cost, Osinbajo tells oil and gas stakeholders. NNPC say it remains committed to OPEC Plus agreement. The Central Bank of Nigeria releases safety framework to stabilize financial system. Plus, new Nigerian airline to commence operations soon. Details of these and more on Business Express reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. And I am Leah Katun Babatunde. The federal government has disbursed the sum of 123.348 billion naira to state governments in the second round of performance-based grants under the state's Fiscal Transparency, Accountability and Sustainability Safeties Program. The Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, disclosed these in a statement issued by the ministry's Director of Press and Public Relations, Hassan Dodo, in Abuja. She said the disbursement followed the achievement of results by the states in the just concluded 2019 Annual Performance Assessment APA. She added that the second part of the disbursement involved a new COVID-19 response as well as the implementation of a tax compliance relief program for individual taxpayers and businesses by states. The disbursement included 91.048 billion naira of performance-based grants for the 2019 APA results achieved by 32 eligible states across various disbursement-linked indicators DLIs, covering fiscal transparency, accountability, expenditure efficiency, revenue mobilization, and debt sustainability. States received grants in accordance to the number of results achieved, with Sokoto State receiving the highest amount of 6.612 billion naira, while Kano State got the lowest amount of 1.71 billion naira. Players in the oil industry need to find and agree on cheaper means of producing oil while also ensuring a more competitive environment that meets the needs and purpose of the Nigerian nation, including the largest production volumes possible.
This was at a virtual meeting on the Petroleum Industry Bill, PIB, with stakeholders in the industry under the auspices of the Oil Producers Trade Section, OPTS, in Nigeria, and Independent Petroleum Producers Group. The meeting held as consultations ahead of the passage of the Petroleum Industry Bill continue. Vice President Osinbajo noted that in line with the focus of the Buhari administration, there is need for stakeholders in the sector to agree on terms to create a more competitive environment while maximizing opportunities in the oil and gas industry. Vice President Osinbajo observed that the passage of the PIB should be seen as an opportunity to transform the industry by addressing lingering issues that have impeded development across the different sectors of the industry. The new PIB, which was presented to the National Assembly by President Muhammadu Buhari in September last year, has already passed the second reading.
The Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation (NNPC) has reiterated its commitment to abide by the output cut agreement of the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries (OPEC) and its allies called OPEC Plus to stabilize the global oil market. The group managing director of NNPC, Milikari, who gave the assurance at the ongoing virtual Gulf Intelligence UAE Global Energy Forum 2021, said despite the negative effects of the production cuts on government revenues, it is the best step towards redeeming the value of oil on the global market in the interest of all. Speaking on the outlook for Africa and Nigeria's oil gas sector in post-COVID era, the NNPC boss said NNPC is hopeful that by the end of the year, the demand for crude oil will pick up. This, he says, will be a marginal increase in output, stressing that the corporation is focusing more on gas, condensate and other revenue streams to tackle the revenue challenges arising from the production cuts agreements. Now, investors in the Nigerian stock market gained 23.58 billion naira Wednesday as markets remains positive. The NSE All-Share Index inched up further by 0.11% and year-to-date currently stands at 0.17%. And of course, those are the opening figures this morning. Away from home stocks in Asia Pacific were mixed in Thursday trade as investors await the release of Chinese trade data for December. Boss Day Abel has that report.
On the global scene, stocks in Asia-Pacific were mixed in Thursday trade as investors regionally reacted to Chinese trade data for December. In Japan, the Nikkei led gains among the region's major markets. Mainland Chinese stocks, on the other hand, declined. The Shanghai Composite shared, while the Shenzhen Composite dropped. Hong Kong Hang Seng Index advanced 0.49%. European stocks opened higher Thursday despite ongoing concerns over the coronavirus pandemic and political turbulence in the US. London FTSE it's seen opening 15 points higher. Germany's DAX 59 points higher. CAC 40 of France is up 19 points. In the United States, Biden is due to outline his economic plans later on Thursday, and U.S. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell will also speak, either one of which could set stocks rising again. In Africa, markets are picking up on a slow note this Thursday as all eyes are on activities in the U.S. Boss Day Able, Business Express.
The Capitol riots and subsequent suspension of accounts belonging to U.S. President Donald Trump across social media platforms have created some ripple effects across global stock markets, and now he's been impeached again. Joining me to examine market trends from London is Jamil Ahmed. Now, Jamil, impeached for a second time. How are markets reacting to this?
Markets would be reacting completely different if the timing was different. And by that, I mean, if we didn't have a new president in waiting in just a number of days, in fact, it's less than 1 week now before Joe Biden does get inaugurated, then the markets would be reacting far more to impeachment than what they would have done, let's say, if President Trump was to have won the November 2020 elections. So that's why markets are not moving as much. But still, it's a big thing politically. The first president to ever be impeached twice, the only other president's actually only ever been impeached once, so he's already doubled all of the other presidents if you take into that account. But generally speaking, the markets are also a little bit weary because this impeachment, it will take a lot of energy and effort away from the Senate, and also in terms of what Biden might want to do to help the U.S. economy and the global economy through this pandemic for economic and financial policies. This impeachment is now going to overshadow that event, but nonetheless, what happened last week was unprecedented. It was unacceptable in the eyes of many, and it is something that still has to be addressed regardless.
Okay, now, so how would you describe the Trump phenomenon after his suspension, of course, from some social media platforms, and then we saw heavy tech stocks just tumbling on themselves?
So what we knew heading into the 2020 presidential elections was that the Democratic lawmakers had already issued statements and been very strong in the stance that they believe that there are technology giants that hold a monopoly power over the sector, which basically means they're too strong and the other technology companies can't compete with them. So the technology giants really had to make a strong stance against what happened last week. But at the same point, there's a lot of controversy because it took such a really horrible event, that's something that none of us have seen in our lifetime, to get the social media feeds, to get the social media networks to be taking down these accounts and really targeting such hateful messages. So there is a question to be asked of these feeds, is like, how are they going to be able to combat such aggressive content? How are they going to be able to take away content that does incite violence because, or any kind of hateful language? Because these accounts, they're mostly on mobile devices or social accounts. There's not that much verification behind creating an account. So the questions now is what they're going to be able to do to toughen that stance and to help prevent any kind of hateful language from being displayed through any kind of account. And that probably means they're going to need KYC and know your client procedures, which is unheard of in this kind of industry. In banking and so on, of course, you need passport verification, security checks, and so on. But in social media feeds, we don't see that kind of back-end support.
Okay, so I actually tried to catch a glimpse of what the market is looking like in the last few minutes, but of course it's a bit far away from me. But it seems Wall Street has sort of moved on from the political turmoil. Have they moved on?
They have, because again, if it wasn't for Biden being inaugurated in 1 week's time, if it wasn't for a change of presidency, the market reaction would be completely different. There'd be a lot more concern. But because everybody knows that there's going to be a new president, the sitting president has now conceded defeat and admitted a commitment towards transmission of power. And because of this is seen as a story that overshadows, it's like a cloud that is overshadowing what's ahead of us. And this is why markets are trying to be quite numb, or if anything, a little bit fatigued by the Donald Trump euphoria over markets, because there's something happening that's going to change the economy, that's going to change the global market matters, and that's the new president and what policies he might bring in. And again, if President Trump had won a second term, the market reaction to the impeachment will be 100% different. It just happens to be the circumstances have changed and there's going to be a new president, and because of that, the markets are not moving very much to the political noise.
Okay, so what are the factors driving the markets? Do you see driving the markets this week?
So we will basically see the anticipation ahead of Biden's inauguration. So it's possible we will have a bit of a quiet trading week, but we still have some very key economic data releases, particularly the US retail sales. They come out on Friday afternoon. Now, the US retail sales is going to be critical because consumer spending equates to 70% of US economic growth. That's important for everybody in a global economy because the United States is the strongest economy in the world anyway. And generally speaking, what we also have to look out for, and I know this is the cross fingers moment that we really don't want to be seen, it's because of the coronavirus and the pandemic, the infection outbreaks. More economies are going into lockdown measures, more economies are announcing controls because they cannot prevent this new variant or the stem from the infection outbreaks anyway. And because of this is another key ingredient for markets because we cannot look past this. Yes, there's a vaccine. Yes, there's a lot of light at the end of the tunnel. But at the same point, we're still seeing twists and turns on this roller coaster, and we haven't got to the end of this scenario yet.
All right. The tech giants, we saw them in the recent 1 week take some very bold steps, and some say the steps are sort of political. And now, do you see these guys, the giants now, do you see them determining political situations in nations?
No, because I don't think they can. Everything that these technology giants and these social media feeds have been created for is for, allowing expression of speech, allowing expression of voices. It's very difficult to control. You can't control really what somebody's about to post. You would need so much moderators of robots and algorithms. So really how they can change how they've always operated over the past 10 years or so anyway is a bit peculiar. Yes, they can put more eyes on politics. Maybe they can put more eyes on trying to stop political opinions on such feeds. At the same point, it's a website, they're mobile applications, they're something that somebody can just do on their phone very simply. And because of this, what really can they change in politics other than hopefully being able to combat the unconventional sides, such as robots, fake accounts, that could fuel propaganda? They can maybe target that, but they can't change political forces on a whole.
Okay, so what sort of how would what sort of hold do they have on markets?
the hold is that they're so powerful, specifically following the pandemic. Technology giants now contribute towards a huge proportion of the S&P 500 index, which is the major index of United States companies, and by many accounts, it's the most important stock market in the world. And because technology giants, the Facebooks, the Amazons, the Apples, their market cap over the past year or so has soared to unbelievable levels, and because of this, they have power on the sector. So if the technology giants now begin to pull back and fall in share price, it will have implications on global stocks as a whole. At the same point, what we do have is a dispersion of equality, because the technology giants have become so powerful, but the real economy and these companies that really focus on sectors like retail or day-to-day economic matters, they are not as influential anymore. And because of this is why Democrats and lawmakers are concerned over terms like monopoly power and how powerful technology can become.
Now, COVID-19, of course, you made reference to how it's affecting markets and trade across the world. How do you, what role will it be playing in energy demand this year?
So energy demand, specifically if you look at oil price and you look at a few other commodities, they had a really difficult's not even the statement, they had a really terrible 2020. But at least the shining light to that is that a lot of these factors such as COVID, the pandemic, has been priced in. So for example, oil price, if we look at that energy denominator, has performed much stronger since the pandemic shock of April 2020. For example, oil price now, US oil has gone above $50 for the first time since February 2020. So as long as this pandemic does not last longer and lock economies down longer than the Q1 of 2021, we should still see a very positive and good year for oil prices and other energy consumers. For example, we've got the oil price might hit 55, it might go towards $60. But the key ingredient here is that the pandemic has to be over. And that's a situation and a denominator that we can't control on a personal level. It's just something that has to be controlled by many people and communities getting together to stop this pandemic from spreading further than it already has.
So before I let you go, Jamil, what is the currency market looking like this morning?
So one of the interesting trends of 2021 so far has been the US dollar, and the US dollar has been stronger than we would have thought it would have been this year. But I do think this is still a short-term bounce. There's still a lot of opportunity and potential for the dollar to weaken into 2021 further. And this means that currencies such as the British pound, the euro, the Australian dollar, but we can't forget about the emerging market basket as well, from the Chinese yuan to the South African rand, the Nigerian naira. All of these currencies would benefit from a weaker dollar playing field, and that's the opportunity and the story that we're looking to continue to tell throughout this year.
Thank you very much, Jamil. Now, Tafida Isama Findi runs an abattoir in the outskirts of Abuja. Tafida, who has been in the business for more than 10 years, says COVID-19 dealt him a hard blow, with the second wave of the virus still affecting the business. On surviving COVID-19, he spoke to Moplang Dakok about his journey so far.
Surviving COVID-19 series is brought to you in partnership with the Central Bank of Nigeria.
He has been a farmer since childhood and delved into agriculture business as a teenager until he decided to build an abattoir 10 years ago. His reasons:
the meat of Nigeria cannot be eaten by dogs in Europe or South Africa. Let me pioneer starting a modern abattoir. Since I have some cattle on my own, so I mobilized all the monies I have, some property I had, I sold them.
It was a commercial abattoir, but with COVID-19, they had to resort to private services where they only butcher on request.
Due to the close down, we cannot bring cattle from Niger, Cameroon, and other places which were our source of cattle. So everyone has to source whatever he needs within Nigeria.
While agriculture in general is said to be one of the sectors heavily affected by the pandemic, Tafida is of a different opinion.
COVID-19 is not a threat to agriculture at all. Go to Taraba and see how people from Zamfara, Katsina, Sokoto have moved down in this dry season and they are doing dry season rice farming. Wonderful. But it is 90% of the food we are eating is not imported. So the effect is not felt. But the only way the effect was felt, because the farmer uses most of his input as imported input.
Surviving COVID-19 series is brought to you in partnership with the Central Bank of Nigeria.
Let's now see how the commodity market is faring this Thursday morning. The start of the Africa Free Trade Agreement sends a strong message of Africa's readiness to become a thriving network of commercially active states. The Secretary General of the AFCFTA, Wamkele Mene, who stated this, said under the agreement's framework, Ghana is setting the pace for other countries as it is one of 3 countries that has a suite of ready border and custom facilities that meet the AFCFTA's trade terms. Egypt and South Africa are also ready to carry out commercially meaningful trade, but Nigeria, the bloc's most populous nation and largest economy, is yet to have the infrastructure for the agreement's benefits to kick in. 54 of the African Union's 55 nations have signed on to the AFCFTA with the exception of Eritrea, but only 35 have submitted their instruments of ratification to the AFCFTA Secretariat. The Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, has released the framework for quick response QR code payments in Nigeria. The latest move is part of efforts by the Apex Bank to ensure the safety and stability of the Nigerian financial system, promote the use and adoption of electronic payments, and foster innovation in the payments system. The framework provides regulatory guidance for the operation of quick response in payment services in the financial sector of the nation's economy, which aims to ensure the adoption of appropriate QR code standards for safe and efficient payment services in Nigeria. And the dollar extended its rebound from near 3-year lows versus major peers on Thursday, supported by higher U.S. yields as President-elect Joe Biden prepared to outline his plans for massive fiscal stimulus. This is where we end this edition of Business Express. Be informed that we value your feedback, so keep the comments, observations, and suggestions coming, tweets, messages, emails. Be informed that all previous episodes are available on YouTube as well on the NTA's channel. You can also communicate with us on Twitter, and the handle is NTA News Now, and the hashtag is Business Express, returns Friday by 3 p.m. Be safe out there. I'm Lea Katun. Baba Tunde.